I'm Marcy Winograd for Code Pink. Coming up on Empire on the Rocks, Medea Benjamin joins me to talk about the congressional investigation into Trump's attacks on Venezuela, the right of the U.S. military to refuse illegal orders, solidarity with Palestine from divestment in Michigan and North Carolina to Italy for a general strike. Stay tuned. Welcome to Empire on the Rocks from Code Pink, one of the nation's leading anti-war organizations. I'm Marcy Winograd, co-hosting with Medea Benjamin, co-founder of Code Pink. Hey there, Medea.
Hey, good to be with you.
Good to be with you too. And I hear you're still chasing down those lawmakers on Capitol Hill. I think Trump is running away from Hegseth. I mean, I think he can't quite decide what to do, but he is considering getting as far away from him as possible, even though we know Trump is the one who is issuing the orders here. But we'll talk about Trump, Hegseth, all of that coming up on Empire on the Rocks. First, let's go to you, Medea, on Capitol Hill.
Hamas.
Regime change in Venezuela. Is that
we want regime change of Hamas.
Yeah, but how about Venezuela? Do you think the U.S. should get involved in that?
We want to destroy Hamas, and you got to stop being an anti-Semite.
Well, do you want regime change in Venezuela?
Of course.
U.S.-sponsored regime change.
Of course.
Why?
Why? Because they are killing the Venezuelans.
Do you know how this kind of regime change ends up?
Well, I know
chaos, death, destruction.
If they don't, it's going to be even worse.
If they don't what?
Hawaii.
Well, Congresswoman, are you in favor of regime change in Venezuela? Do you think the U.S. should be involved in regime change? Do you think that's something the American people want, Congresswoman? It's a fair question. I don't know if you've watched the opinion polls, but the American people don't want us to be involved in another endless war. Is that something you could comment on, Congresswoman, please? Is that something you could please comment on? You won't comment on whether the U.S. should be involved in regime change? Nothing. Congressman, could I ask you how you feel about U.S. involvement in regime change in Venezuela?
Not right now. I'm busy.
Are you in favor of U.S. involvement in regime change in Venezuela?
I have a meeting to get to, but I support America First priorities and not getting involved in unnecessary wars around the world.
Thank you so much. I hope you'll sign the war power resolutions. Congressman, do you think the U.S. should be involved in regime change in Venezuela? Sir, is this something you could please comment on?
I hope you have a nice day.
Well, I will have a nice day if you talk to me about what the U.S. is doing in Venezuela.
Medea, I marvel at how steady your voice is. You are so patient with these people. I don't know how you do it.
Well, they are just so disgusting. I mean, we've been through over 2 years of questioning them about support for genocide, support for sending more bombs to kill more babies in Gaza. And now we have to talk to them about a war in Venezuela. And it's so interesting, Marcy, because you see there's so many things going on at once. There's the partisan issue, that they don't want to go against Trump. If they're Republican, they're so afraid of Trump. It's amazing. If they're Democrat, they're more willing to criticize Trump, but they want to make sure they're not seen as if they were supporting Maduro. And, both parties are war parties. So while there is a lot of discussion, we're going to get into that, there also is the fact that the opinion polls show that the American people don't want war, and that includes the Republicans. And so you've got to ask, Marcy, at what point are we going to have more alignment with what the American public wants, which is stop sending money to Israel, stop supporting war in Ukraine, stop supporting war, period, and what those people in Congress support?
Well, they say there is a tipping point. We just haven't reached it yet. So, Medea, let's talk about Venezuela, a country of 28 million people taking U.S. threats to invade seriously. What's happening there?
Well, we don't know what Trump is planning, but we know that the threats keep getting upped and upped and up. I mean, now he unilaterally declares that Venezuelan airspace is closed, which, by the way, it's not. But, Marcy, I don't know about you, but this is like so not last century, this idea that the US can impose its will on other countries and that suddenly Latin America again is the US backyard. We've seen it not only in Venezuela, but the kind of talking to Colombia and to Mexico, we're going to invade your country, what the president just did in Honduras, picking who should win that election and threatening if they didn't vote for his candidate, that they were going to be economically hurt by it. The level of U.S. interference is just terrible, and the amount of buildup of war ships, now 15,000 troops in the region. It was 5, then 10, now 15. The Venezuelans are taking this very seriously. They're doing their own mobilizing. They're doing their own war exercises. They are getting the people, normal, everyday people involved in resistance. And so it just is this horrible possibility of a U.S. invasion, a direct military invasion. We know that the president has already authorized the CIA to carry out actions inside Venezuela. So it's very scary. And I think that as we go by every day, there are more and more of an urgency for people to contact their members of Congress and say, we don't want war.
Absolutely. And the number to call is 202-224-3121 and urge your member of Congress to speak out vociferously to denounce these illegal attacks. They are illegal attacks on the fishermen off the coast of Venezuela and Trinidad. Now, the latest CBS News poll, which Medea, you mentioned earlier, shows that 70% of those surveyed, over 2,000, about 2,500 people around November 19th, when asked, do you support a U.S. military action against Venezuela? They said no, they do not. That's 70%. But what is troubling is that 1 in 5 who were surveyed had no idea about Trump's warmongering against Venezuela. So my point is that we need to just keep talking about it and be loud in talking about it because people are not aware.
Well, yes, but they do have this sense that they don't want to be involved in war because they've seen in the last 20, 25 years what that has meant. And so there's this, what we used to call, Marcy, the Vietnam syndrome, where people just don't want to get involved anymore. And now I think it's an Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya syndrome. So yes, the American people, whether it's the Democrats, Republicans, or independents, show we don't want to get involved in these wars. And Marcy, you mentioned fishermen getting blown up. I mean, we don't know who's getting blown up. And I assume that a number of them are people who are smuggling cocaine, not fentanyl, because there is not fentanyl coming from Venezuela. But even if there are smuggling cocaine, there is no right that the U.S. has to just blow these people up. And now we've been talking about the 2 survivors. I don't know if you wanted to get into that, Marcy.
Well, let's hold off for a
Okay.
minute because we do have a quiz, a fun news quiz coming up. But before that, you mentioned that Venezuela was mobilizing to prepare for war. It's just horrible. I wanted to add that Maduro, the president of Venezuela, is also taking another approach. In addition to mobilizing and preparing his army, he is taking bits of his speeches, remixing them, and urging people to connect with students in the United States to push for dialogue and peace rather than war. Listen to the chants.
No crazy girl, no. She pass, Dialogue. Yes. Peace. Yes. Respect. Yes. War. Student. Listen to me. War. War, no. Never war.
There you have it, mobilizing not just the army, but also students in Venezuela to reach out to students here. Let's hope that message comes across. Meanwhile, Medea, are you ready for the news quiz?
Sure.
Okay, here we go. First question, multiple choice. In a rare split with the Trump administration, Republican-led armed services committees in the House and Senate will investigate Secretary of War Pete Hegseth's order to what? What are the choices? Let's see. A, publicly shame out-of-shape generals. B, make basic training scary again. C, order a second strike on a Venezuelan boat to kill survivors.
I think it must be A, publicly shame out-of-shape generals.
Well, we know that he's done that also, but the investigation is over what they are calling the second tap. Sounds like a tap dance. It's not that, right? The second strike on these two survivors clinging to a smoldering wreckage that had been hit by a U.S. missile. And to me, it's just bizarre, I don't know, that Congress is so focused on this second strike and who issued it, and this being a violation of the rules of war. What about the first strike, right? What about all these strikes being illegal?
Well, that's right. I mean, it's so twisted to say you can kill the 10 of them, but then when you go after the other two, that's even more illegal. But, you know, these quote laws of war, you're not supposed to kill people who don't pose a threat anymore. Now, the question is, what threat did they pose before that? Because, you know, these boats, Marcy, first of all, we know that if you are a drug smuggler, the conviction, if you are convicted, is not the death penalty. The other thing to know is that these boats can't even make it to the United States. They're not even headed to the United States. They're going to another point like Trinidad and Tobago. So there are no threat to the United States. Oh, and as I said before, this isn't fentanyl, it's cocaine. And the cocaine is not going to the United States. The cocaine is going to Europe or to Northern Africa. So I don't know how you can justify calling this legal. And yes, they are much more upset about the killing of the two survivors. But what the heck? At this point, I think we got to take anything we can get, Marcy. And if that's what's going to get the Democrats and some Republicans riled up enough to hold hearings on these issues. Now, Marcy, I was just in Congress today, and it seems that, you know, since Republicans control the committees on both the House and the Senate, it has to be the Republicans who will, quote, allow for public hearings. On the House side, it doesn't look like they're going to allow for it. They're only going to allow for the kind of private hearings, briefings where the public doesn't get to know anything about what happened. But on the Senate side, hopefully there will be public hearings about this. And I think it is important for people to learn the truth about what happened, and not just about the second strike, but about every single one of these strikes, and to hear the ridiculous kind of arguments that they're going to be giving about why this is, quote, legal.
And we'll get to that in a minute. First, I want to go to this clip of lawmakers from both sides of the aisle talking about an illegal act.
Lawmakers from both sides of the aisle say they support congressional reviews of U.S. strikes on alleged drug boats that we've been reporting on for months. A report from the Washington Post now claims Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth gave a verbal order to leave no survivors before the first boat strike back in September. When two people on board survived, a second strike was allegedly ordered. Democratic Senator Tim Kaine and Republican Congressman Mike Turner were asked about this on Face the Nation.
If that reporting is true, it's a clear violation of the DOD's own laws of war, as well as international laws about the way you treat people who are in that circumstance. And so this rises to the level of a war crime if it's true.
If that occurred, that would be very serious, and I agree that would be an illegal act.
All right, so let's talk about why, not just why this second strike would be an illegal act, but why all of these strikes? I think there have been, 21 or more?
21.
Yeah, against these boats. They're not warships, they're speedboats. What are some of the main arguments, Medea, that these acts violate both international law and national law?
Well, they violate international law because you cannot use lethal force against anybody who is not attacking you. And there hasn't been one instance of these boats attacking anybody, not one. So that would be number one. What else, Marcy?
Well, we also know that, again, yes, this is not self-defense, right? Nobody's attacking us. These are extrajudicial killings, and that is also a violation of international law. A breach of sovereignty. Talk about a breach of sovereignty with Trump saying, we are closing the airspace over Venezuela. What? In terms of domestic law, it's a violation of the War Powers Clause. I know you have been visiting offices asking people to vote for war powers resolutions saying, this is not a declared war. All of this aggression must stop. Where are we with those war powers resolutions now?
Well, there are actually now 4 war powers resolutions on the House side alone. One of them dealing just with the issue of the boats that was introduced by Jason Crow. One of them dealing with more of the internal attacks on Venezuela. That was introduced by Ilhan Omar. One of them introduced by the leadership of the Democratic Party in the House. And that's also around the boats. And then there's a new one that was just introduced by Jim McGovern, which it seems that has the most momentum, even though it was just introduced, because McGovern is seen as I don't know if he's more moderate at all. He's real progressive, but people seem to like him. He also is in the Rules Committee. He also is part of the Lantos Human Rights Committee. And his is a counterpart to the Tim Kaine resolution that we saw on the Senate side. And the thinking is that it has more of a chance to get bipartisan support, because that is exactly what we need. While there are a number of Republicans who have been criticizing what's happening, so far none of them have signed on to any of these war powers resolutions. So we're hoping this new one that was just introduced, it's HR Resolution 64, will get the momentum and will get some courageous Republicans who are willing to look truthfully at this issue and call for what the Constitution calls for, which is to say that the legislative branch is the only branch that has the authority to declare war. And indeed, the administration is using war as a justification for blowing up these boats. And so it must be authorized by Congress.
And of course, we know the real reason why Trump is blowing up these boats, and that's to grab Venezuela's oil and install a puppet, Maria Machado, corrupt, into the presidency of Venezuela, and then everybody can party on with Benjamin Netanyahu while he commits, with U.S. backing, and maybe Venezuela's in the future, genocide.
I don't know if you saw the clip of the Congresswoman Maria Elvira Salazar on Fox News, where she just openly said, this is a win-win for the oil companies in the United States, and they will get the chance of a lifetime because Venezuela has the largest reserves of oil. And she was just grinning ear to ear at the possibility of U.S. companies being able to take over Venezuela's oil.
All right, next question, Medea. True or false? U.S. soldiers have a duty to refuse illegal orders under the U.S. Constitution and international treaties to which the U.S. is a party, such as the UN Genocide Convention and others. True or false?
True, absolutely.
Absolutely, and we had 6 members of Congress. Granted, these are members who were in the military, entrenched in the intelligence community. They're not our heroes at Code Pink, but I have to say that I appreciate their public service announcement reminding the military not to obey illegal orders. You have the right to refuse. And in so doing, they are echoing the call of organizations like Code Pink, like Veterans for Peace, About Face, that have long said the service members do not have to follow illegal orders. In fact, we've encouraged whistleblowers like Alvin. Well, we hope that ultimately Alvin Hosley, who headed up the Southern Command off the Caribbean, will come out as a whistleblower and say, this is wrong, these attacks on Venezuela. All right.
Well, that's right. And then the response that Trump had to these 6 people who served in the U.S. military or in the intelligence services was to say they should be hanged. They should be executed. And now the Department of War, Pete Hegseth, is launching an investigation into one of them, into Mark Kelly. And he has been getting so many death threats that he just held a press conference. And of course, he is married to, what's her name, Gabby
Giffords.
Gabby Giffords, who was shot and is to this day still recovering from that. And so he takes these threats seriously and is just appalled, as are so many people, that the president would come out. He said, never in the history of the United States has a president called for the execution of members of Congress.
You have to wonder when the American public and Congress will demand that Congress impeach not just Trump, but his whole cabinet, right? Under, I think it's Article 2, Section 4, you can get rid of them all. Well, in the meantime, let's hear what Senator Mark Kelly, former astronaut, former naval captain, is saying about Trump and his threats.
Folks, Donald Trump called for my execution. Now, I served 25 years in the United States Navy. I flew 39 combat missions. I flew into space 4 times. Never once did I expect that at some point the President of the United States was going to threaten me with being hanged because of something I said. Folks, we have a Constitution. We have First Amendment constitutional rights of free speech. I know a little bit about political violence. My wife, Gabby, was nearly assassinated. She was shot in the head because of political violence. She nearly died. These are the kind of threats that this president makes, not just to me, some of my colleagues as well. Just this week, he did this. Threatened our lives, said we should be hanged because of something we said. This is dangerous, and this kind of rhetoric, especially from a president of the United States, makes us all less safe. Folks, if you can, speak out about this. It's dangerous talk from a president who doesn't really seem to get it, doesn't understand his responsibilities under the Constitution. And I gotta say, this was a rather disturbing thing for him to do.
You know, and I would have been really shocked if any other president, did this. But when I saw that tweet today, it kind of sort of made sense. I mean, these 2 guys, they informed me of this in a tweet, because this is not about the law. This is about the media cycle, and it's about intimidation. And it's almost, the whole thing's almost comical. Like, how does reciting the UCMJ, how is that, which is the Uniform Code of Military Justice? We basically repeated the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and they're saying that's in violation of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. It's absurd. What I'm worried about is the reaction and what this transmits to the military and the public, which is basically shut up and listen to that guy. And that's not the way our system works. We have loyalty. My oath and every oath every member of the military took is loyalty to the Constitution, not to a person. And he's trying to get some fear out there. And fear can be contagious. Mm-hmm. But what also can be contagious is courage and patriotism.
And I would argue that patriotism is speaking out when your president, not really my president, but the president is threatening to take us into another endless war. I just wanted to let everybody know, Medea, that there are resources if you're in the military or you have a friend or family member in the military who wants to refuse or feels they have a duty to refuse illegal orders. There are resources. So for example, there is the GI Rights Hotline, 877-477-4487. There's also the Center for Conscience and War, 800-379-2679, and the Military Law Task Force of the National Lawyers Guild, 619-463-2369. And I would add that if you want to know more, listen to Code Pink Radio, because Marjorie Cohn, an international law scholar, has written an article published in Truthout entitled "Soldiers Must Disobey Unlawful Orders Under Trump. It's their legal duty." Next question, Medea, are you ready?
I am.
The White House is welcoming new MAGA Pentagon reporters, I call them stenographers, following press restrictions that require reporters to do what? Let's look at the possibilities. A, wear MAGA hats at all Pentagon briefings. B, be nice to MAGA influencer Laura Loomer. C, obtain Pentagon pre-approval of their stories.
Well, I know that C is correct because it is so absurd and gross, but I wouldn't be surprised if B were correct as well.
Be nice to Laura Loomer now.
Yeah.
To her. So not everybody is going along with this, right? Quite a few reporters have opted out because not only are they being asked to seek pre-approval, but they're being limited in where they can go in the White House because the Trump administration is petrified that some of these reporters will catch somebody off guard and ask a question and get a truthful answer. So who has refused to sign? Do we know? Let's see. Fox News, right?
Amazing. I mean, that's really a positive thing. Who would have thought?
Turning Point. Okay, Fox News, well, CBS, ABC, the networks have refused to sign. Who has signed on? Turning Point USA's Front Lines.
That makes sense.
One America News Network, the Epic Times, the Federalist, and this I never heard of. I guess I'm out of the loop. Lindell TV, that's the Pillow Guys Network.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, there's all these new media that are now have this incredible access to the White House. And that's been going on since Trump's second term, which are news media that are just MAGA pro-Trump media. They're not real media. As you say, they're stenographers.
All right, last question on Empire on the Rocks. Trump recently announced he was suspending all A, White House renovations, B, asylum claims, C, phone calls while napping.
Well, it couldn't be C because I just saw him today napping during his cabinet meeting. So I don't think he could do that one. And the renovations are going, if you call it renovations, that obscene ballroom. So it's got to be asylum claims. And I think it's greater than that right now, according to the latest reports. They want to just stop all people from coming in now from 32 different countries.
Third world countries, he's saying.
Third world countries. I think the one thing they all have in common, it's Black and brown people.
Well, we must continue to organize, challenge, speak out, all of that. All right, Medea, finally, let's end on a note of optimism, resistance, and solidarity. We also saw the release of a Palestinian who was freed from Israel's prisons. He was a teenager, 16 years old, and he had been locked up for quite a while. But due to a national campaign in the United States, we were able to see him freed at last. Also, the state of Michigan is divesting from Israel bonds. Yes, the state of Michigan's retirement system has decided not to reinvest in Israel bonds, a move that activists have been celebrating for divestment. So yes, and in another victory, the North Carolina State Prison Fund has sold almost $6.5 million of Israeli government bonds that it has held since March of 2025. And in California, where I am, we have teachers, CalSTRS Divest for Palestine, who are demanding that our pension fund, which is the second largest pension fund in the United States, something like a portfolio of $380 billion, divest from all sorts of investments in Israel, from, military contractors complicit in the genocide to Caterpillar and so forth. And that's an ongoing struggle, but this gives us inspiration, right? So I want to thank everybody for joining us on Empire on the Rocks. It's been great to be with you and to be with Medea, co-founder of Code Pink. Peace.